the gap, standing for Jesus, standing in the gap for family and friends, standing in the gap, one love for all, so we all can make it in.
We have instituted a section that we call the Gap News, the Gap News. And what that is, we try to bring issues that are relevant today, or that are on the headlines today, and incorporate it into standing in the gap. Standing in the gap. And I've actually asked Marvel to take the lead on this. And she has, she's doing a great job with it. And she has some things that she wants to bring to your attention today, out of today's news.
Well, Saints, there's been a lot going on this week. Oh my goodness, I had my pick of things because we had a huge indictment this week. But I want to share with you something. You know, we were talking about slavery just a couple of weeks ago, and that long shadow of slavery, and how white supremacy seems to still be affecting our lives in such a terrible way, really. I'm going to share a video with you, and it's kind of long, but it's very involved, and I want your responses. So here we go.
We're voting on House Resolution 63. All those in favor, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote?
Now, on whether or not to expel Justin Pearson
Mr.
will
Clerk,
be announced.
take the vote.
Aye, 69, 26 nays.
Having received the concurrence of 2/3 of the members to which the House is entitled in the Constitution of the State of Tennessee, House Resolution 63 is hereby adopted. Without objection, the motion reconsiders table. Pursuant to Article 2, Section 12 of the Constitution of the State of Tennessee, I hereby declare Representative Justin J. Pearson of the 86th
Here's Justin Pearson, as you're just seeing right there, has been expelled with 69 votes in favor to expel him. We needed 66 votes to announce a formal expulsion. He has now been expelled, joining Justin Jones, who had also been expelled. Gloria Johnson survived her seat with 65 votes, just one vote saving her seat. Folks, I have to tell you the optics there, as Gloria Johnson referenced herself, perhaps the only white out of the 3 Congress members there and representatives that had been saved her seat. So there you see it. The Tennessee House voting to expel 2 of the 3 Democratic lawmakers for their objection to gun legislation 2 weeks ago. This is the culmination of that. This is a historic moment right now, as you're seeing playing out. State legislature there in Tennessee.
What happened today, the expulsion of 2 representatives in the Tennessee State House, has only happened twice since the 1860s. The last expulsion in 2016 was for a lawmaker accused of sexual misconduct. This time it was for a violation of the rules of decorum. Gary Tuchman is inside the state capitol, just outside the House chamber, joins us now. So, Gary, talk about what's just happened.
Anderson, as we speak, behind me, there are about 150 very angry people, angry that 2 legislators have been expelled from the House of Representatives. Right here, I'm standing in between Tennessee state troopers right here, the people back here. And the reason they are standing here is because the legislators are coming out of the door now of the legislative chamber, and they're trying to forestall any possibility of violence. But so far, everything's been peaceful. I don't know if you can see there are people playing dead, lying down right here with signs like the people are watching you, and fighting fascism is a moral obligation. But these people are very angry. All day long, there have been hundreds of people outside and inside the legislature building, the Capitol, and there have been about 250 people inside who are now leaving and coming out here. But basically, in a nutshell, and that right there is one of the legislators who's coming out right now. But that in a nutshell, this is a political story. And here's the man who was just expelled. This is Justin Pearson. I don't know if you can see him, but Justin Pearson is now walking out talk to the people here. Let me see if I can get a word from them. Representative Pearson. Representative Pearson, how do you feel, sir? How do you feel right now, sir? All right, he's not talking right now. Let's hear if we can get a word. Mr. Representative, how do you feel right now? How do you feel right now, sir? All right, it's pretty chaotic, as you can see. I'm going to get back towards our camera. It's a chaotic scene, but to put this in a non-political nutshell, these people have been expelled from the House of Representatives because they talked out of turn last week, 7 days ago. They walked out of turn. They're not allowed to walk into the well of the House of Representatives without permission from the Speaker of the House. They did that to protest this, and they also talked out of turn, and 1 week later they're expelled. Listen to what people are saying. No justice, no peace. Take a look. So 2 representatives expelled. The other one, Gloria Johnson, survived by 1 vote. Gloria Johnson, who is white, and Justin Jones, who is black, both have said on the record they believe it has something to do with skin color. We don't know the answer to that, but 2 of the 3 legislators expelled are no longer representatives. They were elected by tens of thousands of people in their districts, but they've now been expelled from the House of Representatives by Tennessee state legislators. Anderson, back to you.
And Gary, what are their options now? The 2 legislators who have been expelled, will they run again?
So here's something very interesting, Anderson. You're going to talk to Justin Jones shortly. He'll tell you if he's going to run again. But what's really interesting about Tennessee law, if he decides to run again and he wins again, he can't be charged on these same counts again. That's what's interesting. It's double jeopardy. If your constituents decide to elect you again, you can't be expelled again on this charge. However, they could find other charges to expel him. So it doesn't mean he wouldn't be expelled again. He just can't be expelled on this charge of disorderly behavior. That's what the Republicans are saying. He committed disorderly behavior. These people just said they wanted to get their words across about the gun issue, and they weren't being allowed to talk. And that's why they walked into the well. That's why they talked, in order to get their words out that their constituents wanted them to say. That's what they say, and they weren't being permitted to do so. But what's remarkable about this, Anderson, it was only 1 week ago when other people here were expelled from this legislature. We know of only 3 cases since 1866. It was because of crimes or issues of bad morality. There's never been an issue where it's breaking a rule. And I've covered a lot of state legislatures in my career, 40 years. People break rules all the time. They don't get expelled. This is very unusual. The Republicans we've talked to said it's necessary because it disrupted the House of Representatives here. But that being said, it is most unusual.
Gary Tuchman, we're going to come back with you. We're going to continue follow this, continue with those. We're going to reposition our camera. President Biden is following this story. Quoting now from his tweet a short time ago, quote, 3 kids and 3 officials gunned down in yet another mass shooting. And what are GOP officials focused on? Punishing lawmakers who joined thousands of peaceful protesters calling for action. The president adding it's shocking, undemocratic, and without precedent. Now, shortly, we're going to talk to Justin Jones, who is one of the representatives who was expelled just a few hours ago. The representative who was just expelled, as Gary Tuchman was talking about, and was just leaving the House floor. That's Justin Pearson. Gloria Johnson, as you know, a 3rd representative who also took part in this protest last week. She survived the vote to expel her by 1 vote. Let's see if we can hear some of what Justin Pearson is saying.
It's killing people, and they're treating things like this as normal. We can never normalize the ending of democracy. We can never normalize the tyranny of the way that these people in positions of power are operating due to white supremacy and due to the maintenance of patriarchy. That's what we're up against. But we are going to fight it because we believe that there is a future that we can live into that is better than the present that we currently have. Thank you. Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to say, sir? Yeah. We're going to keep fighting for people in Nashville.
So again, that's Justin Pearson, who has now been expelled. And again, this is from a protest that took place last week. These 3 members stood up, approached the well to speak. They didn't have permission to speak. They used bullhorns to try to get their point across. They were speaking in the wake of the mass murder of 9 people at the school in Nashville. Do we have Justin Jones? Okay, we're waiting to hear from Justin Jones. Gloria Johnson, as we said earlier, spoke to reporters after she survived her vote. Unclear why she survived her vote just by 1 vote, where the other 2 representatives did not. I'm also joined by the Atlantic's Ron Brownstein. Hey, Ron, talk a little bit about, put up some of this in context and perspective. Is this just about a violation of House decorum rules that took place last week? Clearly, they violated the rules. They used a bullhorn. If everybody did that, that would be chaos. But this is an unusual and an extreme reaction to it.
Yeah, look, I mean, it is unprecedented in Tennessee and possibly in the country to remove a legislator, to expel a legislator, to effectively erase the votes of their constituents for this kind of infraction. I think, Anderson, you have to see this in the context of what has been happening across the red states on a wide range of issues where you see Republican-controlled legislators and governors whose political power is rooted in their domination of non-urban, predominantly white areas, using that statewide power to override the decisions of racially diverse, blue-leaning big cities and counties on a wide range of issues. I mean, you can look at what's happening in places like Texas, where the state has taken over the school district in Houston. It may do so in Austin, in Florida, where Ron DeSantis has fired 1 elected Democratic prosecutor and is moving against another. Places like Georgia and Missouri and Tennessee, where they've taken over preempted prosecutorial and policing powers of local governments and taking that power to the state. And obviously what's happening in so many states on curriculum that effectively override the ability of localities to set their own rules on talking about race or gender or sexual orientation. It is a very consistent pattern across the red states where Republican coalitions rooted in non-urban, predominantly white places are using their power in the most, and this may be the most dramatic and egregious example, to override the decisions of local government.
Representative Jones, if you can hear me, I appreciate it. Was this, in your mind, about the violation of decorum rules last week, or is this about something else?
No, this is something much more egregious. Today, Tennessee expelled us, myself and Representative Pearson, the 2 youngest black lawmakers, a predominantly white Republican supermajority, because we stood with our constituents, these young people you see gathered here who are demanding that they act to end school shootings. That's why we're being expelled, not because of a crime, not because of an ethics violation, but because we stood with these young people who are demanding that we act to end these school shootings a week after Nashville was terrorized by a school shooting at Covenant Elementary School. And rather than address the issue of banning assault weapons, my former colleagues, the Republican supermajority, are assaulting democracy, and that should change. That should scare all of us across the nation.
The Tennessee State House Speaker, Cameron Sexton, he likened your behavior during the protest last week to the January 6th insurrection. I just want to play that for our viewers and then ask you about it.
2 of the members, Representative Jones and Representative Johnson, have been very vocal about January 6th in Washington, D.C., about what that was. And what they did today was equivalent, at least equivalent, maybe worse, depending on how you look at it, of doing an insurrection in the Capitol.
Was what you did worse than or equivalent to the insurrection in the Capitol?
I mean, it is a completely ridiculous statement from Representative Speaker Sexton that is trying to incite a reaction. What we were doing was the opposite. We were calling for the end of violence. We were standing with our constituents, demanding that we take action on gun violence in our community, because this is not the first mass shooting in Nashville, and it won't be the last until this body acts. So we stood with our people, demanding that the legislators take the grievances of these young people. You hear the chants going on right now. People want action from this body, and until they get it, we'll continue to show up and hold this legislature accountable, whether I'm inside the body or outside the body here in the hallway.
Do you regret at all doing what you did? I mean, obviously, you could have stood outside with demonstrators and made your point. The fact is you were doing this on the House floor with a bullhorn, and it is probably a violation of the rules of decorum. Do you regret it at all? Was there some other punishment that would have been acceptable to you?
No, I mean, this came after the speaker shut off our microphones, will not call on us as Democratic lawmakers to speak. And so it was our only way to uphold our constitutional duty. Tennessee Constitution, Article 2, Section 27 says that lawmakers have a right to dissent from and protest against any action or legislation that's injurious to the people. And so while I broke the House rules, I upheld my oath to my constituents, 78,000 constituents in my district, District 52, many of them these young people here who are demanding that we act and demanding that we do something, and that we needed to say that on the House floor. We needed to make sure that those young people, their voices, their demands, their grievances were held and were heard on the House floor. I didn't go there as an individual. I went there as a representative of 78,000 people for District 52. And that's why I went to the well, demanding that my colleagues act on this crisis of mass shootings that is plaguing our nation.
Representative Gloria Johnson, your Democratic colleague who stood with you, protested with you last week, was not expelled today. She survived by one vote. Did that surprise you? Why do you think she survived?
I mean, it was surprising, but we are united. As Representative Gloria Johnson said, I mean, the only difference is our skin color, and I think we have to be honest about that. That again, this predominantly white Republican supermajority is expelling the two youngest black lawmakers because we stood with young people demanding that this body act. And so we still stand united together. But what happened today is threatening not just to Tennessee, but across the nation. This usurping of the Democratic, voters' will of my district, of silencing of 78,000 people in my district, the most diverse district in the state of Tennessee. I mean, it's very scary for the nation to see what's happening here. And if I didn't know that it was happening to me, I would think that this was 1963 instead of 2023.
Personally, what do you do now? Would you run for your seat in the next election? Is there another election to be held?
I mean, there's a step to fill the vacancy that the council, the Metro Council, National Council will have to address. There's also going to be a special election. But I'm looking at legal remedies, because what I believe is that what happened here, and after talking to attorneys, I mean, it was unconstitutional. It was a violation of due process. It was an overturning of the will of voters, silencing of my district. The most extreme measure is to expel a member, not for an ethics or criminal violation, but because of a rule of decorum. And so that's what we saw. And so again, what happened today was to distract from the real issue, which was that a week after mass shooting in Nashville, rather than pass laws to pass common sense gun laws, my colleagues expelled myself and Representative Pearson because they're afraid of what we are giving voice to, which are all these young people you see gathered around the Capitol, demanding this body change. Gen Z, millennials, saying that it's our time now and that we need substantive and urgent action to address this crisis of mass shootings.
State Representative Justin Jones, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Joining us now, senior political analyst Ron Brownstein. He's senior editor at The Atlantic. Also, Audie Cornish, who is with us here at CNN. So, Audie, let's just regroup here a little bit. For folks who are just joining us, Justin Pearson, Justin Jones, Gloria Johnson, all three took part in a protest on the House floor using bullhorns last week. They said they weren't being heard. Their microphones were turned off, so they protested. It was a violation of the rules of decorum. Just today, there were votes to expel two of them. And as we said, Gloria Johnson survived just by one vote. So explain, if you can, we were talking before this, what happens next here?
Well, what happens next is there are special elections for the two seats that were vacated. Already in Nashville, the Metro Council, which is the local government, is planning to call a special meeting on Monday, and they do plan to sort of re-invite Mr. Jones, which you just heard, back to that seat. So in terms of the stakes, not that much has changed, but I really can't underscore enough how significant the tensions are between Nashville, this metropolitan area, mostly led by a Democratic kind of council, has been kind of at odds with the Republican State House, and how, Ron will talk about this, how that is really reflective of a trend that's going on across the country.
Yeah, Ron, it is interesting, and we see this on election nights, when John King is at the magic wall and we're all waiting for votes. Right. It's, big cities voting Democrat in states that are largely red.
Yeah, Joe Biden won 91 of the 100 largest counties in America. And, Donald Trump won 2,600 or so of the other 3,000. The dynamic you see in state after state, is Democrats. You could draw an imaginary beltway around every large metro in the country, and Democrats are consolidating their strength inside of that, and Republicans are strengthening their hand outside of it. But I think that what we are seeing in the red states, that political pattern extends from blue, it's as true in California as it is in Texas. But what we are seeing in red states is this systematic effort to use this statewide power to preempt the ability of those blue metros to make their own decisions, and for voters in those places to set their own course. You're talking before about the generational transition. In many of these states, the generational transition and the racial transition are completely overlapping. They are essentially the same thing. If you talk about places like Florida or Georgia or Texas or Tennessee or Arizona before they elected a governor, places where the preemption has been most powerful, generally speaking, you have a Republican coalition that is rooted in the older generations that are predominantly white in those states, and a Democratic coalition that is rooted in the increasingly diverse younger generations in those states. And what we see, not only on preemption, but on issues like LGBTQ rights and voting and abortion bans and book bans and classroom censorship, you see these Republican coalitions moving to impose on the states the values of their older, white, predominantly Christian coalition before this demographic change possibly alters the balance of political power in their states. I've likened what's happening, Anderson, to these Republican legislatures are stacking sandbags against a rising tide of demographic change. And I think this is one of the most dramatic examples of that we've seen anywhere in the country.
Audie, do you think these protests will have an impact on the legislature there?
I don't know if it will have an impact on the legislature, so to speak. I mean, it certainly brought more scrutiny on their activities. But I also want to come back to a point that Justin Jones said about Gen Z and millennials. They have entered the chat, so to speak. We're seeing this generation of activists start to enter the lawmaking process, just like the generations before them, some out of Fisk University, right, and Nashville in the 60s, who ended up being lawmakers. What's significant about that is they're a generation that watched Occupy Wall Street. They are a post-Trayvon Martin generation. They are a Black Lives Matter generation, and they are a kind of Parkland era generation. They think about gun policy and the politics around shootings differently. Their politics are more confrontational, and they really do feel as though this is their time to make a mark, and they're very media savvy. And I think that Justin Jones, in a way, in particular, and Pearson, also from Memphis, they really embody kind of that mix of savvy and politics and approach to progressive politics that is distinct to this generation.
But Audie, does that mean? I mean, on the protest that they did, they clearly believe that they have the moral high ground. It is difficult to legislate if members of a representative, if the representatives bring bullhorns.
I understand what you're asking, but I think what I'm saying is that there is a generational preoccupation with decorum. There is an era of what was called respectability politics. If you dressed the right way, if you acted the right way, people would consider your politics serious and take you seriously. I think this generation thinks that that is not totally true.
Well, there is so much to unpack in this video. So we've got the white supremacy. Sister Monica called that out right away. The white supremacy. 3 people did the same thing. 2 of them were black. They got expelled. 1 was white. Got through scot-free. So we've got that. We've got the generational and the demographic tidal wave of change. And I really loved what the one guy said about the Republicans putting up sandbags against that tidal wave of change. Then we've got the totally undemocratic and unconstitutional expulsion of a duly elected representative. Now they got George Santos, a criminal, in the Congress. Nobody's touching him. And because these brothers got up and insisted on being heard when their mics were being shut off, their voting machines were being shut off. They were being completely cut off at the knees in their ability to even do their job as legislators for their districts. And so they took this approach, and now they've been expelled. What do you got to say?
Well, I tell you, the this whole Constitution and Bible thing, it kind of I mean, what we just saw is it kind of justifies what we have been teaching over the last 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, what is justice about what they did?
There's no justice. And you heard the people hollering, no justice.
And what is mercy? Mercy would mean that, all right, you guys, we could expel you, but we're gonna give you a warning or whatever. That would probably embody some justice. I mean, a mercy. And then walk home. And why are you doing this? Are you doing this for the honor of God? I don't think so. I mean, we talked about the long shadow of slavery. Remember?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how they get around the fact that 3 people do the same thing, and only 2 that get expelled are black, and the white person doesn't. And this isn't on her, because she stood with them.
She did
the whole time, and she only saved it by 1 vote. But it does show the long shadow of slavery, and people who think that shadow is not all that long, they have to keep watching, because that shadow is long, and it's still
really
there. And the things that they're talking about, gun legislation and all that, that is in play. That is something that should be talked about. And when you cut off somebody's mic so that they can't talk to you and all that, and then you get mad when they hollering at you in another way. I mean, all you're doing is trying to shut them up. This is happening all over the United States. If you don't think it's happening in Ohio, where we got this crazy Jim Jordan, who's and this Senator Vance and all that, you haven't been paying attention. And that's one reason why we bring up this gap news, so we can let you know that what we're talking about isn't some isolated fact over here in the corner. It is here. It is here. And I know Marvel's very passionate about this.
I'm very, and Sister Monica said, has anybody ever been expelled? And that one commentator said, not only not in Tennessee, but he thinks nowhere in the country has it ever been that someone gets expelled. You get expelled for sexual misconduct. You get expelled for getting convicted of a crime, not for a rule of decorum.
Violation. Well, we have to, and another thing that is so important and that is happening is when they pointed out there's a change coming on the horizon that these people see. And they say, whoa, we're going to be outnumbered here in 2043 or whatever.
Yeah, it's not long.
There's going to be more people of color than white. And they know that what comes with that is authority, They'll have to vote. I mean, these next 2 generations, one thing I'll say about these generations that come after us, when you talk to them, you can talk to them and they'll look at you and listen to you and all that, but they come down to one little point. They said, that ain't right. That ain't right. You can talk all this stuff you want. That ain't right. And then when you try to overwhelm them with your thoughts and all that, they're on their phone. Fact checking everything that you say, and they'll say, "Well, no, you don't know what you're talking about," and that's coming. That's coming, and this gun issue. Who's the one that's a lot of people getting killed but they're the kids in school who are getting killed and have to deal with this and listen to the authorities, and their parents say, "Well, what can we do about it?"
Let's send thoughts and prayers. They're like, no more thoughts and prayers. Yeah. I want the guns out.
Yeah, I don't want to get shot.
Right.
I don't want that AK-47 or whatever AR or whatever they call it, blowing my head off,
Right.
or my friend's head off, or even
Right.
put me under the threat of that happening because I can't stand that. Yo, you guys need to act. And then here comes the authorities saying that, well, there's not much we can do. We not even gonna do any background checks and
No red flag
no
law.
red flag laws,
And we
anything
definitely
like that.
not going to get rid of these military grade weapons.
Mm-hmm. Because see, if they start doing that, they're taking away your Second Amendment rights and all that, and see that's what a generation said. It ain't right. I don't care about the Second Amendment versus me getting blown away, and my friends and family getting blown away and all that. It don't matter. It don't matter.
That's what Sister Michelle said. What Constitution? What Constitution? And we really need to be praying. But I want to point out something too that young brother, Representative Jones said. He said, they called me uppity. And said, you're expelling me, but what you're trying to do is expel this movement. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to happen.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to work. See, and when you do stuff like that, because most of the ones that were storming the house in Tennessee were white, young kids who are banding together, and now you got these people who have basically been crucified for standing up for what they came to argue about. It's going to spread. They're not going to forget that. And as these young kids turn into voters and all that, this Tennessee authorities may be in the last days of their authority, because it's going to change.
One other thing I want to mention, and that is, you saw the change that happened in Michigan when they put a statewide ballot vote up for eliminating gerrymandering in their state. Mm-hmm. The reason that these districts and these state legislatures have a super majority is because they have drawn their maps so that they ensure their little red districts. Mm-hmm. But if these maps are drawn properly, then those super majorities, you go to some states and it's mostly rural. Okay, you're going to have more red counties or more red districts, but it's not going to be where, it's been drawn so that, the 20,000 black people that are in the corner of this district have been drawn out. So we really need to look at all of the activism that needs to happen around gun control. I'm going to throw out there the whole women's rights over their bodies. That's got to be in there. But looking at statewide votes to eliminate gerrymandering, all of a sudden, then all of our state districts will be drawn fairly based on whatever it is, not gerrymandering. And then all of a sudden, those elections are going to look a lot different. We're going to have a lot more different people being elected at the local levels in these states.
Well, like the Republicans are apt to say, it says, hey, they're not doing it against me, they're doing it against you. And so in this case, this coming, they're going to try to do it. And Ohio's going to be a state right in the middle of that, because of how it votes and how it supports and all that kind of thing. So there you are. Gap news, huh? Something right out of the current events. Think about that. Think about that as we go through this. All right.